everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today I have a little addendum to my previous haul from a couple of weeks ago. This is not a haul, this is just a few more things that trickled in that really belong to that last one. If you saw that previous video, I did say there was an addendum coming, a few more things that were ordered, and I had some birthday spending money. Why am I giving this big disclaimer? Listen and don't judge. I have a few more new books, but it's not a haul. I might read the beginning paragraph. I've done that before, and sometimes I leave it in and sometimes I cut it out because the overall video got too long. So we'll see. Maybe I'll say it and it may or may not make it in there. I think that's interesting to explore a little bit of the flavor and style of a book and hear its opening, but sometimes it just gets cut for time. So here we go. All right, the first one is the most mysterious of the batch because it is what arrived for my October selection in my Deep Vellum subscription. If you're new to the channel, just to let you know, I have a subscription to Deep Vellum Press, which is an independent nonprofit publisher of both US and international titles, and it is located in Dallas, Texas, where I used to live. Now I'm down in South Texas in Corpus Christi. I lost a sizable grant earlier this year along with many other presses, and at that time I decided to subscribe, and they send a book every month. Something new, something interesting, poetry and fiction, and some are written in English and some are translated. So here's what they sent this month, and I don't know anything about this author. I have never heard of this author, and I was completely surprised. So the book is called What Remains by Leyla Erbil. This is a Turkish author. The translator, there's several translators, Alev Ersan, Amy Marie Spangler, and Mark David Wyers. And there's an introduction by Aitan Tartici. So I think that previously Deep Vellum Press translated her novel, A Strange Woman. And she also writes poetry, and this is a novel in verse. In this remarkable multi-layered narrative, Erbil pens an elegy to the Istanbul of Era's past and all that's been lost in its transformation. Through the eyes of a woman named Lazen, we witness the landscape shift from a vibrant multicultural hub where a young Jewish girl snaps her pencil in half to share it with her Turkish classmate to a city fractured by political violence. The sharp crack of that pencil becomes an echo in Lazen's life, a symbol of both rupture and communion, the sound of something shared and something lost. So this, to me, I'm very intrigued. I will read the introduction. I usually don't read them until after, but I might go ahead and read it just because I don't know much about this author. And looking at the style, I do see the verse style, but then there's a narrative segment. Here's how the book opens. It's very descriptive. In the garden, rambler roses, slender thistles, angelica skirl up every vertical thing they find. Hellweed and stinging nettles canopy two bushes called Gog Magog, who whisper insidiously to each other, calling us those tyrants. A burst sack of charcoal leaning against the plum tree cries out in constant refrain, "Charcoal, top-grade charcoal!" The chimney starter, the grill, the gridiron, brass tongs, pine kindling, a box of Tikal matches at hand, the smell of tunny, bonito, mackerel entwines with the song drifting from neighboring windows. And then there's a passage that I think is in Turkish. And then it says, there stands our three-story timber house, the work of a Greek craftsman named Haji Murat. So I think it goes on to describe her home, her childhood. I don't know if it's going to be challenging to read or if I'll get sucked into the swirl of this narrative. Is it stream of consciousness or is it more concrete? I really don't know. So if you know anything about this author and her style and what to expect, I'd love to hear about it in the notes. I don't know exactly when I'll read it, but in terms of booktube events, it would work wonderfully for women in translation, but I might read it before then because that's next summer. The next two books are books that I went and bought. They're brand new releases. Well, not brand new. They're newish releases that I bought with some of my birthday money. The first one is The Imagined Life by Andrew Porter. I've been hearing things about this. It's sort of been building up steam. Last spring, when we went to the San Antonio Book Festival. This author was at the book festival, but I had never heard of him. I didn't go to his session. And he came to my attention because when we were shopping in the book sales tent, Cooper, my daughter's boyfriend, picked up a book of short stories by Andrew Porter, and he liked them. He said they were good when he did read them. And then I started hearing about this newest novel, which I guess is what he was talking about at the festival, but it just went right past me. But now I'm interested, and I really love the cover too. And here is what it's about. Stephen Mills has reached a crossroads. His wife and son have left and they may not return, which leaves him determined to find out what happened to his own father, a brilliant, charismatic professor who disappeared on a wave of ignominy in 1984 when Steve was 12. As he drives up the coast of California seeking out his father's friends and former colleagues, the novel offers us tantalizing glimpses into Steve's childhood, his parents' legendary pool parties, the black and white films on the backyard projector, secrets shared with his closest friend. Each conversation in the present reveals another layer of his father's past, another insight into his disappearance. Yet with every revelation, his father becomes more difficult to recognize. And with every insight, Steve must confront truths about his own life. So I really do love that kind of story where an adult has to re-examine the past and they realize this vast difference between their memory, which is from a child's perspective, and then looking back as an adult, all these different layers and nuances, and everything shifts. And when you talk to different people, the story changes. So I really love a book like that. And here's the first paragraph, which cemented my interest. When I first embarked on this project a few years ago, this search, if you will, for the truth of what happened to my father, my wife Allison warned me about the dangers of getting too close to something I might not want to know. She reminded me of what happened when she'd gone through her own mother's journals shortly after her death. About half of the stuff in there, she said, she'd wanted to know, and about half of the stuff in there she hadn't. In the end, she felt that her mother's image, or at least the image she'd already had of her mother, had been diminished, changed. She'd been humanized is what I think she meant, and I suppose that sometimes, despite our best intentions, this isn't something we always want. Ooh, now I want to know more, I want to know everything. It just sounds like my kind of thing. I like those books that just get into that kind of quietly get into all of the family stuff and just unpeel the layers of the onion. The next one is The True Story of Raja the Gullible and His Mother by Rabih Alameddine. It is true that I recently read a book with my Pineiro Project group called The Angel of History by Rabih Alameddine. That was a book, I don't remember the date that book was published, but it was a backlist title that we all agreed on because it was one that none of us had read and we were all interested in it. And it just really led me to want to read more by this author. It is also true that in that previous haul video, I did show a book by the same author called An Unnecessary Woman, and I'm going to do a buddy read of that book in November with my good friend Priscilla from Evening Reader. So that is the next book by Rabih Alameddine that I'm going to read, but this is his new release, and it is currently shortlisted for the National Book Award. And okay, I had to get it. I'm really into this author right now, having read the one book. And I mean, look at the cover and wait till you hear the description. I mean, even if I had not read anything by him, and this was the very first thing I saw, and I saw this and then I read this, I would be thinking, who is this? I want to read this book. In a tiny Beirut apartment, 63-year-old Raja and his mother live side by side. A beloved high school philosophy teacher and the, quote, neighborhood homosexual, Raja relishes books, meditative walks, order, and solitude. Zalfa, his octogenarian mother, views her son's desire for privacy as a personal affront. She demands to know every detail of Raja's work life and love life. Boundaries be damned. When Raja receives an invite to an all-expenses-paid writing residency in America, the timing couldn't be better. It arrives on the heels of a series of personal and national disasters that have left Raja longing for peace and quiet away from his mother in the heartache of Lebanon. But what at first seems a stroke of good fortune soon leads Raja to recount and relive the very disasters and past betrayals he wishes to forget. When I'm looking at the structure and the chapter outlines, it looks like we're going to move back and forth in time, which was a feature in the structure of the previous book I read by this author. And here's the first paragraph. And I read this in the bookstore, and then I left the bookstore with this book in my hand. This morning, my mother sat in front of me, covered neck to toe in a red checkered, black streaked wax tablecloth we've been using as a hairdresser cape for a few years, fastened with a binder clip, of course. I'd been her designated hair colorist since she stopped trusting professionals while still in her early 40s. She cursed the entire trade when one poor sod mistakenly dyed her hair a deep russet. And he was a poor sod because he was still a young apprentice at the time. He was all she could afford. My father had my mother, all of us, on a strict budget. Every now and then I would ask if she could sit down on the floor between my legs so I didn't have to stand while dyeing her hair. She refused, of course. I had to suffer for her elegance, she said. Just in that one paragraph, I'm already getting a glimpse of the family structure, the dynamic between this mother and son. And if she's in her 80s and he's been dyeing her hair for 40 years, what does that tell you? So I must read this, but I'm going to read the other one first that's coming up, but this will be soon. The next one is another read a book, got to read something else by this author kind of situation. So recently I read Sea Scraper by Benjamin Wood, which was longlisted for the Booker Prize and criminally not shortlisted. It is absolutely wonderful. It's brilliant. Just Quiet Gym all day long. It's so good. But I wanted to read something else. That book is a very, very slim book, and this book that I bought is not slim whatsoever, but many a person told me that this is also really wonderful and I should read it. So I found a secondhand copy of the Ecliptic. This particular copy was withdrawn from the Gulf Gate Public Library in Sarasota, Florida. And I've got to say, I have bought a number of books that turned out to be withdrawn from libraries in Florida. And what's left in those libraries, I do not know. But anyway, it has been rehomed and now it is here. And I might take this mylar off if it's not glued down. Here is the description. Situated on a Turkish island, Portmantle might be the strangest, most exclusive artist colony around. Its brilliant residents linger for years, all expenses paid, and adopting new names. Relieved of the burdens of time and ego, they are free to create. That sounds fabulous. Elspeth Conroy, a.k.a. Nell, Knell, is a Scottish painter who has been at Portmantle for a decade, a refugee from the hectic London art scene. Her fellow exiles include a novelist whose sole book became a classic and paralyzed his muse, a playwright who left behind her family, and an architect obsessing over an unfinished cathedral. I just edited out 4 attempts to say insular, insulated, insular. It shatters when a bedraggled 17-year-old arrives at the gate, his background and talents unknown. So this sounds already, this artist community that people stay at and they're funded and they have new identities. I'm into this. And then here is the first paragraph. Is it crinkly enough? He was just 17 when he came to Portmantle, a runaway like the rest of us, except there was a harrowed quality about this boy that we had not seen before in any of the newcomers. A private torment seemed to clamp the muscles of his face, as though every disappointment in the world had been disclosed to him too young and stunned his expression. We knew him as Fullerton, an ordinary name, a plain one, but not the sort that sinks into the depths of memory without unsettling others. The assortment of people, of other authors on the blurb on the back is sort of intriguing too. We have Emily St. John Mandel, S.J. Watson, and Charles Yu, and Jonathan Lee, among others. So quite a wide range of writers commenting on this book. Okay, and then the last 2 are books that I purchased to go with upcoming reading events, things that were not accessible through the library, and I have purchased a copy to participate. The first one is The Thanksgiving Play by Larissa Fasthorse, and it has a second play in the volume 2 called What Would Crazy Horse Do? The Thanksgiving play is the selection for November in my Endless Drama event. There were two plays. There happened two plays each month throughout the year. Both of the plays were hard to source, so I relocated one of them into next year. So now there's just one for November called The Thanksgiving Play. And by the way, next year there's going to be one per month all the way across. I'm going to just reel that one back in a little bit. So I'm working on right now what the plays will be for next year, but there will just be one a month. A group of well-intentioned white teaching artists scrambled to create an ambitious, woke Thanksgiving pageant. Despite their eager efforts to put the most culturally sensitive show on possible, it quickly becomes clear that even those with good intentions can be undone by their own blind spots. And the reviewer from the New York Times, Jesse Green, said, satire doesn't get much richer, a takedown of white American mythology, the familiar whitewashed story of pilgrims and Native Americans chowing down together gets a delicious roasting. So I think that will be just right, perfect play for November. And if you want to join, and it's not too late to join, even though there's only 2 months left in the year, because the project's going to roll into 2026. So I will put the Discord link if you want to join Endless Drama and talk about this or any other play. There are two plays in December. It's a Christmas, it's a Thornton Wilder play, but it has Christmas in the title. It's like the Long Christmas Dinner, I think it is. And then the other one is Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. So, but for November, the Thanksgiving play, and now I am ready and I have a copy. I'm not going to read a selection because that's kind of hard when it's in a play format. The author is a writer, choreographer, co-founder of Indigenous Direction, the nation's leading consulting company for indigenous arts and audiences. She is a member of the Sikangu Lakota Nation. So we're going to find out more about her in November. And then the last book is also by an Indigenous author, but it's an Australian Indigenous author. And this is for an event coming up in January, but it's always good to be prepared as soon as you find a well-priced copy of a book. And that is Edenglassie by Melissa Lucashenko. I'm going to read this with the Pineiro Project group, which we're not reading Pineiro anymore at the moment, but we're still using that name. And this was the book we selected to read next. And it has beautiful French flaps. The word Edenglassie, on the back it says, derived from a combination Edinburgh and Glasgow, Edenglassie uses the name of the penal colony that became Brisbane. Brisbane? I should have checked. A place of stray dogs, mangroves, horse dung, mud, dust, and bullocks, tar barrels, and brutality. All right, here's what it's about. Two unforgettable stories, two families, 200 years of history. Oh, family saga. 1854, when Melanion meets the beautiful Nita in Brisbane, or Edenglassie as it was once briefly known, his community still outnumbers the British settlers. Tensions are simmering just beneath the surface of a fragile peace, but hopes for independence are running high. Yet when colonial unrest tears through the region, Melanion's passion for his new bride clashes with his loyalty to a homeland in danger. 2 centuries later, fiery activist Winona meets Dr. Johnny when her grandmother Eddie has a serious fall. Winona just wants the obstinate centenarian back on her feet, but a shrewd journalist has other ideas. Eddie becomes a local celebrity, dominating the headlines as Queensland's oldest Aboriginal. Her time in the spotlight brings past and present crashing together, the legacy of Nita and Melanion's tragic past reaching into Winona and Eddie's lives with consequences they couldn't have predicted. I cannot wait to read this book and learn more about the Australian setting and that past and present colliding thing. And when we get to that, I'll learn more about this author as well. So I'm really looking forward to that group read. Let's read a little piece. All right, the first part is called The Fall, 2024. Eddie Blanket was falling towards the good Yagar earth. A calamity. At her great age, a fall meant the end. Simple as that. Broken hit, pneumonia, kaput. Even as she lost the vertical, though, Granny Eddie was rejecting the whole stupid idea. You don't live to her age by damn well accepting things. So, she definitely was not falling. Toppling? Well, yes. Possibly. Or teetering. Oh, like the teeter-totter in the schoolyard, remember? Hot yellow sunshine in the playground, thumping up and down with Lizzie Norman on the other end, terrible buck teeth bared in joy. Lizzie was dead and buried now, of course. Nearly everyone was. Eddie had buried her own kids and her husband, too. Sisters and brothers. She had outlived the lot. And now here she was at South Bank, poised on the edge of the precipice herself. Okay, I'm already rooting for Eddie, and I am excited about all of these books. Tell me if you have read any of these books, or if you are interested in reading these books, or something else you recently acquired that you are even more excited about. And it may or may not be true that there's yet one more book that I need for an upcoming project that just isn't here yet, and we'll talk about it when it arrives. But for now, that is my not a haul, just a few extra books that go with the previous haul wrap up. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you again for Friday Reads.